All right, we are going to move on now to 5.4b. And 5.4b is finding a discriminant. So let's talk about what a discriminant is. A discriminant is part of the quadratic equation. And tomorrow we're actually going to look at the quadratic equation. We're sort of working our way backwards. So we're sort of building and building until tomorrow you can solve using the quadratic formula, or later today. So what the discriminant is, the discriminant is, if this is the quadratic formula, the discriminant is the part underneath the radical. You see this here where it says b squared minus 4ac. That is the discriminant. Now, if you completed 5.4a, this should actually look familiar. In 5.4a, what I did is I gave you the values that went into the quadratic formula and I had you simplify them. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at just that discriminant, the b squared minus 4ac. And we're going to talk a little bit about radicals. If you go on your calculator and do the square root of -5, you're going to get an error because you cannot take the square root of a negative. Because only, remember, square root is what do you multiply by itself to get that? Well, if you take a negative number and multiply by itself, it'll be positive. Negative times negative. If you take a positive number and multiply by itself, it'll be positive. So you cannot take the square root of a negative. So anytime the discriminant is negative, you cannot take the square root of it. Okay, in those situations, we'll say anytime we take a discriminant, if we get a negative, we'll have no solutions. When you go to simplify this, you cannot take the square root of negative. Now, next option you have is if the discriminant is positive. Let's say you get the discriminant, it's 5. Well, see how this is plus or minus this? So when I add square root of 5, I get one answer. When I subtract square root of 5, I get another. So anytime it's positive, you actually end up with 2 solutions. So when you add it and when you subtract it. And we'll talk more about this tomorrow as we look at these. And then the third option you have is, what if the discriminant is 0? Well, square root of 0 is 0. And if I add or subtract 0, say it's plus or minus, if I do plus 0 or minus 0, I get the same thing. So it tells you that you have one solution. So the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac when you're given a quadratic equation. You probably should make sure to say, this is your quadratic equation. Notice it's equal to 0. Here's your A, B, and C. So the discriminant tells you how many solutions there are. And that's the part. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the part we're going to do today, the part you did in the last lesson, and we're going to put that all together in the next lesson to solve the quadratic equation. So, let's get started. If you notice on the board here, I put your step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. If you want, you could pause the video and you can write those on your own. But we're going to go through and see how these steps work, look at an example. And actually, I think they're in your notes as well. So let's look through examples now as we go through this process. So our first example, x squared minus 16x plus 64 equals 0. So if I look at that example, step 1, set equal to 0. Step 1 is done. Step 2, what is your A, B, and C? A lot of times people look at this. This is in this correct form, and they're like, well, A is 0, or A isn't there. But if there's not a number written there, it's the same as a 1. So A equals 1, B equals negative 16, and C equals 64. Okay, so that's step 2, done. Step 3 now, we figure out what is b squared minus 4ac. We can use our calculator. So b, and I always put this in parentheses, negative 16 squared. This will always be a negative times negative will be positive. Minus 4 times a, which is 1, times 64. So you might need a calculator. You get the calculator out to do this. So negative 16 times negative 16. Ooh. There we go. So again, negative times negative is a positive. So this ends up being 256. 4 times 1 times 64. And that's 256 as well. So I get 0. Which brings me down to step 4 now. Okay, my discriminant is 0. How many solutions do I have? Well, if it's positive, it's not positive. If it's not negative, it's 0. So I have one solution. So I found the discriminant, I call it D, and I know that it's one solution. So when I do the quadratic equation with this, I should get one and only one solution. All right, let's go on to example 2. So 7x squared plus 6x equals -2. So step 1, I need to set this equal to 0. It's not equal to 0 yet. But if I add 2 to both sides, 7x squared plus 6x plus 2 equals 0. Now I can go to step 2. I can identify my A, B, and C. Step 3, find b squared minus 4ac. So b is 6, a is 7, and c is 2. So this will be 36. You can use a calculator for this. Do it in your head. Was it 56? So I end up getting -20. So this is my discriminant. Go to step 4. Is it a positive, negative, or a 0? It's a negative. If I have a negative, that means, hey, I'm going to have no solutions. So there we go. And the reason why I get no solution, I cannot take, if this is my discriminant, I can't take the square root of a negative. All right, we got a couple more examples. Some of you may be getting the hang of this. You can move ahead, go on to the homework. Okay, so let's go on to example 3 and 4. Put these up there. Again, you feel free to pause, try these on your own. All right, example 3, I put that up there because it's a little bit unique. Let's get it. Step 1 is done equals 0. But now I say, well, what is A? It's 6. B is -7. What is C? Well, it's simply 0. So when I do this, I say find the discriminant, you'll take b squared minus 4 times A times C, which is 0. So you end up getting 49. Well, anything times 0 is 0. So you just get 49. That's my discriminant. Okay. And then since it is positive, so it means I'll have 2 solutions. All right, go ahead and pause the video. Try example 4 on your own, and if you get it right, go to the homework. You need to do another example, you can. So pause it and come back. All right, number 4. Getting it set equal to 0 takes a little bit of work here. So I got 2 things I've got to move over. So I got to subtract an x squared from both sides, and I've got to subtract the 2x from both sides. So what I end up with is 8x squared. This would be minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. All right, step 2. What was my A, B, and C? Step 3 now. Do b squared minus 4ac. So -4 squared minus 4 times 8 times 1. Now sometimes you can already tell this is going to be a negative. So this is going to be 16 minus 32. So I get -16 is my discriminant. And once again, if you get your discriminant being negative, it means you have 0 solutions. All right, so at this time, I think you guys are probably ready to get your homework. Right? If you want to see one more example, I'm going to do one more, and then you can do it. So. All right. So this would be probably a 4.25 problem on your quiz. Nice basic problem. All right, step 1. Set this equal to 0. Step 2. Identify your A, your B, and your C. some big numbers. Step 3, find b squared minus 4ac. B squared minus 4ac. Let's see, so b is negative 12. A is 4. C is 9. So 12 times 12, negative times negative, make it 1 to 44. Let's see. 4 times 9 times 6. I should be using this, but we'll do it anyways. Times 9. Oh, it's 144 as well. Okay, so I do this, I get 0 as my discriminant. 0 means I have one solution. Alright, well, thanks for watching this video, and go ahead and get your homework now.